Hello and welcome to Tabi Yuriko's tutorial for Oxygen Not Included. In this video, I'll be showing 5 tricks that helps you get into the mid-game quickly and smoothly. For the mid-game transition, it is very important to make steel or at least refined metals. They are required for base cooling, geyser taming, automation, and many other applications. But using the metal refinery can be scary at first. Even if you found some good designs, they could look overwhelming or often require materials that you don't have and could make you stuck in an infinite loop. So here's the first trick. Use the metal refinery infinitely with no effort and no consequences. We start by connecting a liquid pipe to the input of the refinery, just like normal. But for the output, build a single pipe segment that is not connected to anything. This looks weird, but we'll see why in a moment. And for the refinery coolant, it's fine to use any liquid, but best to use the hottest liquid you have. Prepare the ingredients that you want to refine, and we can start the operation now. If your water is hot enough, it will be heated past the boiling point. When it leaves the output, it will start causing heat damage to the pipe. It almost looked like we've messed up, but don't panic. This is all within our plans. First, we disable the auto repair on the pipe and keep the dupes away from the refinery. 100 kilograms of water will boil and damage the pipe this way, and the output pipe will break quickly. This amount of heat is little and will be quickly neutralized by the surroundings, and the steam will condense back to water. When everything settles down, we can return to the refinery, and something magical happens. The refinery is still usable. We can now continue to refine more metals, and it will work perfectly with no consequences. Since the output pipe is broken, no more hot water will exit the refinery, and the working environment will now be safe. So, where did the hot water go? It will continue to stack inside the refinery, but we don't have to worry about the storage. The refinery can now hold an infinite amount of hot water. And even better than that, the hot water inside the refinery will not exchange heat with the surroundings. This means as long as we don't touch the output pipe, we can now do as many refinement as we want, get the steel, the refined metals, and build all the infrastructure we want. And remember, we must initially have one pipe on the output port waiting to be broken. If we have no output pipe at all, then the refinery cannot be used. Now, here's 2 questions. How do we retrieve all these hot liquids stuck inside the refinery eventually? Since it will never leak on its own, we can totally take our time, build an insulated room to contain the refinery, and whatever is required to deal with the heat. Then, only when everything is ready, click the empty storage button on the refinery, and all the hot liquid or gas will be released under our control. Or, you can choose to leave it there forever. After we break the output pipe initially, we don't necessarily have to input more water to use the refinery. You can choose to dump all the liquids that you have no use. For example, mercury. Mercury is generally a terrible coolant choice for metal refinery due to its low heat capacity, which means it will boil easily. But now we don't care about boiling. Just dump all your mercury into it and seal it forever. Another question we might have is, what if I don't have liquid hot enough that will boil in one refine operation? Of course, you can try to preheat the liquid, but a more convenient way is to just loop the output back to the input for the initial maneuver and heat up the output coolant with more refined operations. And just before the liquid is hot enough to boil, cut the output pipe and leave only one segment on the output port, just like what we have done in the beginning. So how do we precisely know when the liquid will boil? There's no need to do the complicated calculations yourselves. If you click on the refinery recipe, it will show, for a particular recipe, how much hotter will the output coolant be than the input coolant. Is this refinery trick amazing? Here's a summary if you would like to review. I'll be making more tutorial videos in the future, so please like and subscribe and open the notifications. And speaking about infinite storage, you might be more familiar with this kind of infinite storage. But what if later we want to transport the liquid or gas somewhere else? We will need power to pick them up again with a pump, and it might require running a very long pipe if the target is far away. Also, storing mixed gas or liquid this way is generally not advised. So here comes a second trick: infinite storage into bottles. There are multiple ways to do the bottle storage. For a small amount of liquid, there's a building called bottle filler, which accepts liquid as input and stores it inside the building. It can store up to 200 kilograms of liquid, and you can either click empty storage or just slide the bar down to 0, then back to 200 kilograms. And the stored liquid will drop on the ground as bottles. You can of course set the capacity lower if you want to produce smaller bottles. But what if we want much more liquid stored? 200 kilograms per click would be too tedious. In this case, we can try to use rockets. Don't worry, the rocket doesn't have to be actually launched. All we need is a rocket platform and a liquid cargo tank. The liquid cargo tank can store up to 9,000 kilograms of liquid. And whenever you want, you can also click the empty storage button, and it will also drop the liquid as bottles. It is a little bit tricky to get the liquid into the cargo tank though, and there are two ways to do it. The first is to use the liquid rocket port loader. It must be placed adjacent to the rocket platform on the same height. It is easy to use, but the liquid rocket port loader needs 240 watts to function, and that kind of defeats the purpose of saving power. So another way I suggest is to build a solo nose cone. Pipe the liquid to the input port of the nose cone on the outside. Then pipe the liquid from the output port of the nose cone on the inside. Finally, place a liquid intake fitting on the walls of the rocket. Then the liquid will flow into the liquid cargo tank. It's a bit more piping, but this is completely power-free, and it automatically accepts all kinds of mixed liquids. When you eventually click empty storage on the cargo tank, different liquid will be dropped in separate bottles, which means it also automatically sorts the liquid for you. There is a larger version of the liquid cargo tank, which is literally called the large liquid cargo tank. It holds triple amount of liquid, or 27,000 kilograms, but it requires steel to be built and requires much more research to unlock. The final way is to just dump the liquid into the nose cone interior itself. You could dump it on the ground, or maybe create another infinite storage in the interior. Note that this will not cost power to pick them up again, because when we want to collect the liquids, just order the dupe to deconstruct the nose cone module. All the gas, liquid, and solids that are still inside will be ejected, and gas, liquid will be stored as bottles, which is exactly what we want. I was using liquid as an example, but if you want to store gas, there are gas variants for all the buildings I use to store liquids: canister filler, gas cargo canister, large gas cargo canister, gas rocket port loader, and gas intake fitting. Moving gas this way is even much more beneficial than liquid, considering liquid pumps move 10 kilograms of liquids per second, costing 240 watts. But gas pumps move 500 grams of gas per second, also costing 240 watts. This means moving gas with pumps are 20 times less efficient than moving liquids in terms of both time and power. If we store them into bottles to be moved by dupes, which can carry 200 kilograms or even tons of bottle in one operation, that would be an even much more faster and efficient choice. Speaking of rockets, when you're actually able to launch one, the rocket has a very special use, which you would probably not expect. And here comes the third trick: fix all your problematic dupe with a rocket. So you might have dupes that are stressed, wounded, or even extreme radiation sickness. They all have their corresponding proper treatment. But if you somehow messed up and have too many dupes going wrong, so you don't have time or don't want to fix them one by one, the rocket is a universal solution for them. We start by building a rocket This rocket needs to actually launch into orbit, but it doesn't need to go to any other planets, so we only need one hexafuel, and any type of rocket is equally fine, so we can just use the most basic rocket, the carbon dioxide engine. There are two ways to do this trick. The first way is to use a trailblazer. We pick the dupe that needs to be fixed to be the crew. If it is able to pilot, that is fine. If not, we'll need another dupe that can pilot to join the crew. For this example, we will pick Joshua with extreme radiation sickness. And now we launch the rocket into the orbit and ask the dupe that we want to fix to use the trailblazer to get back into our base. Now as trailblazer land, you could see Joshua has a lot of his stats reset. Stress back to 5%, bladder almost 0, calories back to 3500, and most importantly, absorb rads down to almost 0. Joshua has basically got out from the terrible status and reset to the healthy default value. Now, he somehow still has extreme radiation sickness shown on his status, but that's just an outdated display. If we save and reload the same save, we can see Joshua's radiation sickness is indeed gone. This trick could also work with wounds, stress, starvation, or most health problem you can think of, and they will all be reset after trailblazing. The problem for this method is, if you have multiple dupes you want to fix, you will need one trailblazer for every dupe. In this case, you can try the second way, but it will be even more barbaric. Now we don't use a trailblazer anymore, and just send every dupe that you want to fix into the same rocket. Now launch the rocket and click this button, abandon ship, confirm, and throw everyone out of the rocket. This will apply the same effect as trailblazing to every dupe in the rocket, which resets all of their health status. The problem is, they will be randomly dropped on the surface, which might not be hospitable. So you should probably prepare in advance and terraform the surface a bit so they can at least survive until they get back into the base. Now, watching this maneuver might be a little stressful, so let's switch to a more soothing trick. Stack pre-space liquids infinitely high. This trick requires using nectar, a liquid introduced in the Frosty Planet pack. Its density is exactly the same as salt water, which is an interesting property. This means if any one of the liquids are dropped on top of the other one, they will be stable and not sink below it. Now, if we control the flow to 10 grams per second with a liquid valve and alternate between the packets of these two liquids, then drop them on the ground, something magical happens. The liquid starts stacking and growing instead of collapsing to the sides. With this trick, we can easily make a 3-tile high vertical hop liquid lock, or even make one that spans the entire screen and separate your base into different sections in a fancy way. But what I like the most is if you continue to drop more liquids and it reaches the vent, it will start falling to the sides. But they will still stay together, relatively compact and stable, and only occasionally collapse, or switch tiles with each other. In my opinion, this kind of looked like Tetris, and I find it very satisfying. Another thing I found satisfying is automation. With automation, you could make some art or play some music to boost your own morale. For example, when my dupes are going to eat, I will hear